Today, I am telling you about 5 prehistoric animals, each frozen in the position they were in at the moment of death. But I must admit, the biggest difficulty I faced while editing this video was being alone with those photographs. In 2007, an interesting day was unfolding on the Yamal Peninsula in northern Russia. Yakutia, a reindeer herder, noticed something extraordinary among the ice while grazing his reindeer: a small baby animal frozen in the ice. This wasn't something that happens to a person every day, so Yuri knew this was no ordinary find. But interestingly, according to Nenet's beliefs, touching mammoth remains brings bad luck, and what was standing in that ice could be a mammoth. That's why Yuri, despite his excitement, was hesitant to touch the carcass. Not knowing what to do, Yuri decided to leave the baby animal at the site and travel 240 kilometers to consult his friend Kirill, who lived in a nearby town. When his friend said the situation needed to be reported to the local museum director immediately, Yuri called the director without wasting time. The director mobilized the authorities and arranged a helicopter to reach the area where the find was located. When they arrived at the area, they experienced a great shock because the frozen baby animal had disappeared. The team immediately sprang into action and started searching the surrounding towns. Yuri and Kirill, feeling responsible, also joined the search. After hours of searching, the persistent duo finally found the baby animal near the town of Novi Port. It was being publicly displayed in front of a local shop. And yes, this baby was a mammoth. It weighed about 50 kilograms and was 130 centimeters long from trunk to tail. In short, it was roughly the same size as a large dog of today. It turned out that the shop owner had bought the carcass from Yuri's cousin in exchange for 2 snowmobiles. They transported the rare baby mammoth by helicopter to the Shemenovsky Museum in Salikard nearby. It is still exhibited there today at the Shemenovsky Museum in Salikard, Russia. Because the museum officials were grateful for Yuri's selfless effort, they wanted to name the baby mammoth after Yuri's wife. His wife, immensely proud of this, said it would be more appropriate to give the baby mammoth the name Luba, a cuter version of her own name, and so the baby mammoth was named Luba. Research shows that Luba got stuck in deep mud and drowned while crossing a riverbed with her herd. This baby mammoth was only 35 days old. When found, Luba's eyes and trunk were completely intact. There were even still pieces of fur on her body. Her skin and internal organs were almost completely undecomposed. So much so that traces of her mother's milk were found in Luba's stomach and fecal matter in her intestines. All these findings indicate that Luba was a healthy baby at the time of her death. Luba's body must have been enveloped by bacteria producing lactic acid after her death, allowing her to remain preserved like a pickle for 42,000 years. Luba was the world's best preserved mammoth mummy until another mammoth, Yuka, was found. Yuka was found in 2010 lying frozen on top of a low cliff about 5 meters high in the Siberian permafrost in Russia. This north-facing slope consisted of a special soil layer from the ice ages called Yadoma. Normally, for a soil to be permafrost, the temperature of the rock or sediments beneath it must remain at 0 degrees Celsius or below continuously for at least 2 years. But because this soil was from glacial permafrost, unlike other frozen soils, it was permanently frozen ground. That is, this soil had been frozen for decades. This is why it contained abundant organic carbon and massive ice wedges. Yuka was only a 6-year-old baby mammoth. It had been waiting frozen in the ice for 39 years. When first extracted from the ice, its fur, trunk, tongue tissue, and much of its soft anatomy were still intact. But the strangest thing about this mammoth was that it had the most intact mammoth brain ever found. Its folds and blood vessels were still visible. In fact, while examining Yuka's skin during the investigation, researchers suddenly saw blood flow. It was an extraordinary moment because this was the first blood ever to flow from a woolly mammoth in human history. The blood flowed from areas where the skin was scratched and wounded. Initially, it was thought to have been attacked by lions or other predators, but the reality was very different. Detailed examinations and trace analyses on Yuka's skin revealed that some cuts on its back and head area were made by humans. This doesn't just mean that prehistoric humans hunted mammoths 39,000 years ago. It also proves that the oldest human origin wound mark on an animal was detected on this specimen. Finding a specimen at this level is extraordinarily rare. Although more than 255,000 mammoth fossils have been unearthed in Siberia to date, Yuka is by far the best preserved among them. This gives Yuka the title of the world's best preserved mammoth mummy. But what really excited scientists was that this extraordinary preservation offered researchers the chance to bring dead cells back to life. In 2019, Japanese scientists managed to revive some biological processes by stimulating structures similar to cell nuclei. But unfortunately, they could not take this process to the cell division stage and truly bring the baby mammoth back to life. That is, they came to the threshold of cloning, but couldn't pry the door open. Colossal Biosciences plans to bring the woolly mammoth back to life by 2028 thanks to DNA extraction from such samples. The company hopes to create the first hybrid mammoth calf embryos and introduce them to surrogate elephant mothers to obtain the first living mammoth calves. To do this, they will combine the mammoth's DNA with that of the Asian elephant, the mammoth's closest living relative. We could literally have a woolly mammoth existing again today. While this is truly exciting, it scares me a little. Because, as I said at the beginning of the video, not only animals are stored under the permafrost, but also ancient plants, pollen, and still living millions of years old bacteria and viruses. In 2014, a viable virus sample was extracted from a 30,000-year-old ice core in frozen soil in Siberia. The virus was named Pithovirus sibericum, and it was truly a giant virus. But the terrifying part is that researchers revived this virus. That is, a virus extracted from beneath frozen soil can be brought back to life. This means that a virus that could infect and harm humans could be unearthed from beneath the soil at any moment. An extremely terrifying situation. In fact, this risk applies not only to viruses, but also to parasites and bacteria. I hope that the majority of our scientists love nature and all of humanity. Now, I'm gonna surprise you a little. Exactly 24 years ago, while conducting research in the Siberian permafrost, scientists came across the frozen remains of an ancient ground squirrel burrow, 30 meters deep. But the remains were very fragmented and scattered. The team, finding nothing noteworthy, took samples for examination from this frozen ground. Unfortunately, these taken samples were eventually forgotten in the laboratory. That is, until 2018. A researcher specialized in the field, while working on this forgotten soil sample, encountered something disturbing. Something was moving inside the soil. When the sample thawed and was opened, they saw microorganisms coming to life. These were microscopic worms, whitish to transparent in color, among the most abundant creatures on Earth. They were called nematode worms. They had survived frozen in ice for more than 46,000 years. They did this through a feature called cryptobiosis. In cryptobiosis, metabolism does not stop completely, but it slows down so much that it becomes immeasurable. That is, cryptobiosis is a state of hidden life, in which an organism almost completely stops its metabolism to survive in life-threatening conditions such as extreme cold, dryness, lack of oxygen, or high pressure. An organism in this state appears dead, but it can be revived when conditions become suitable again. And nematode worms used exactly this method. These worms are actually incredibly common, not just in frozen ground, but everywhere on the planet. It is estimated that there are about 440 quintillion nematodes living in soils worldwide. This means approximately 60 billion worms for every human on the planet. Because they are so widespread, it's not surprising to find them in frozen prehistoric soils either. But what was truly unexpected and shocking was that the nematodes could clone themselves. Yes, these strange worms didn't just come back to life. After returning, they also started to reproduce. Since it was a species that reproduces asexually, it was quite easy for them to multiply. They used a reproductive strategy known as parthenogenesis. That is, female nematodes could reproduce on their own without needing a male. Researchers further accelerated their reproduction by placing the nematodes in petri dishes richer in nutrients. This way, they quickly multiplied populations consisting of clones of these ancient worms from the Pliocene epoch. Researchers determined that these worms belonged to a previously unknown new species, Panagrolimus colymaiensis. Although this species resembles other nematodes living today, it was being discovered for the first time. They were extraordinarily resilient, so much so that they can even live in Antarctica. This is why it's no surprise they survive in frozen soils. Fortunately, these creatures were neither an ancient parasite nor a dangerous pathogen. However, the adaptive strategies developed by these worms raise the question of what other creatures might be waiting beneath the ice to thaw. Scientists haven't been able to give a clear answer to this question so far. But one thing is clear: as global temperatures rise, the ice will continue to melt, and brand new animals and worms will emerge in this process. I hope those we encounter will be friendly. In June 2007, an ordinary day was occurring in Russia. Gold miners working around the Kolyma River encountered something interesting while removing frozen soil deposits. It looked like animal skin. When the miners tried to remove the animal skin from its location, they realized it was much heavier than expected. The animal skin, extracted from a depth of 20 feet with the help of the excavation team, was actually a mummified woolly rhinoceros. This animal had been under the frozen ground for 39,000 years and was found in the position it had taken its last breath. Because it was found near the Kolyma River, it was nicknamed Kolyma. This animal likely died by drowning in a mud pit. In its era, this area was good for pastures, but it was quite dangerous for these large, short-legged creatures. Because the region was covered with lakes formed by melting ice, narrow rivers, and deep pits. The position of its skeleton, with its head stretched upwards, shows that this animal lost its balance on the riverbank and got stuck in the mud. When Kolyma was first found, the right side of its body was largely deformed. The likely reason, as I just said, is that the right side of the animal's body remained on the surface at the time of death. It is thought that small carnivores fed on this part of the carcass. The two right legs of the rhinoceros were broken. However, these parts were later recovered separately from the same area. In contrast, as you might expect, the left side of the animal was quite intact. Additionally, its intestines, stomach, and their contents were still in place. This extraordinary preservation opened a unique window into the life of the woolly rhinoceros for researchers. In particular, the preservation of the stomach contents allowed scientists to clearly determine the animal's dietary habits. Spore and pollen analyses found in the stomach revealed that this rhino's diet mainly consisted of grasses and wormwood plants growing in this part of Siberia. This individual, thought to be female, was the first complete woolly rhinoceros found in permafrost. Although the specimen wasn't full adult size, adult individuals of the species are estimated to have reached about 4.5 meters in length. This is almost the same size as today's white rhino. However, its closest living relative is the much smaller and critically endangered Sumatran rhinoceros. Sumatran rhinos are also hairy. Even their calves are incredibly woolly when born. Compared to other living rhino species, these rhinos had distinctly shorter ears and tails. This is a classic example of adaptation to cold climates. Because in regions with low temperatures, animals tend to shorten their limbs to conserve body heat. Scientists think woolly rhinos had a high infant mortality rate, which makes sense considering how few juvenile specimens we found. Until 2015, we knew almost nothing about the young of these animals. The picture completely changed in 2015 with the discovery of a 10,000-year-old calf. This specimen, the first juvenile member of its species ever found, was about 1.5 meters long and 1 meter high. It's truly heartbreaking that almost all of the animals found frozen in the ice are babies. But unfortunately, we continue our video with yet another baby animal. What do you think is the reason that almost all of the animals found frozen are babies? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. I'm really curious. In 2017, in Yakutia, the permafrost layers began to melt faster than ever. Around that time, local people out for a walk near the Semyu-Yak River encountered something unexpected. It was an animal frozen 7 meters deep, brought to the surface by the melting ice. At first, they thought it might be an ordinary mammoth carcass. But as they examined it, they realized this animal was not a mammoth, but a cave lion. This was a species that humans only knew from fossils. It had gone extinct about 14,000 years ago, and now, there it was, before their eyes, almost completely intact. So this find was no ordinary one. It was truly extraordinary. The locals immediately notified the relevant teams. The permafrost pieces around the animal were already melting, but the team still had to be very careful while extracting the specimen from the ground and clean some of the mud off before placing it on a stretcher. After being removed from the pit where it was found, the cub was taken to Yakutsk. The first procedure done on the cub was to check if there was an infectious disease like anthrax on its skin, because anthrax can survive in ice for tens of thousands of years and spread death again when thawed. Fortunately, the test came back clean. Researchers think that a mudslide cracked the permafrost beneath the cub's feet, and the cub fell into that dark, ice-covered grave, passing away. Because there were no signs of it having been killed by a predator, this cave lion cub, named Sparta, is estimated to have been only 1 to 2 months old when it died. Carbon dating analyses revealed that this animal had stood perfectly preserved under the frozen ground for 28,000 years. Its external body had been so little affected by nature that its skin, fur, teeth, and claws were still intact. Even its whiskers could be counted very clearly. Researchers examining it noted that the only damage observed was matted fur. This animal was so incredibly well preserved that Love Delane, a professor of evolutionary genetics at the Paleogenetics Center in Stockholm, said, "It was definitely very impressive. You know you might find something, but it looked like it had just died 2 days ago." All this high degree of preservation gave Sparta the title of the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. A year later, only 15 meters or 50 feet from where Sparta was found, another cub named Boris was discovered. Finding 2 cubs so close to each other and of similar age initially convinced paleontologists they were siblings. However, carbon dating shattered this assumption. Not only were they not related, there was a gap of exactly 15,000 years between them. Sparta was nearly 15,000 years younger than Boris. That is, Boris had been under the ice for 43,000 years. This time difference might partially explain why Sparta is much better preserved. Clearly, the survival duration had worn Sparta less. Both cubs belonged to the Eurasian cave lion species. Their golden-colored fur resembled today's African lion cubs. The only difference was the thick, long fur undercoat that protected them against the cold climate. Researchers also discovered that their teeth erupted much earlier compared to modern African lions. They attribute this to the need for cubs to grow quickly and start eating meat at a younger age to survive harsh winter conditions. One of the largest lion species ever to have lived, this animal reached 1.5 meters in shoulder height and 3.5 meters in body length. In the same geography, it hunted large herbivores like reindeer, horses, and woolly mammoths. The exact reason behind its extinction remains a mystery. However, the main scenarios proposed focus on climate cooling and human pressure, leading to a gradual decrease in prey resources for large predators. Discovery of Sparta and Boris so close to each other whispers a striking fact to paleontologists. This area was practically a base region for cave lions during that period. As the permafrost thaws, the doors to the past are opening one by one. Ice may freeze time, but it never freezes humanity's desire to learn. And every new discovery shouts out just how ignorant we truly are. Every new find, every new bone reminds us how short our journey is. Perhaps the real treasure lying beneath the ice is the questions that still await asking. Did you enjoy the video? Drop an ice emoji in the comments to let me know you made it this far. Thanks for watching.